As an IT consultant, Marlon oversees all e-business initiatives on behalf of the OECS Commission. This includes working closely with governments, SMEs, and NGOs to ensure that the proper framework for economic development through e-commerce is in place. He has worked on EU, CDB, and World Bank funded projects, assisting with SME development through e-business, as well as holding several portfolios in the banking industry, where he worked with SMEs to manage their financial portfolios. Marlon holds a BSc in Management from the University of the West Indies and an MSc in Technology and Innovation from Aspen University. He said I could leave off the last line, but I like it because it says that nobody could fool him up. He's also a Comp TIA, A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certified. It says that if someone tries to tell him it can't be done, I'm sure Marlon can figure it out. So Marlon's going to tell us about some of the e-initiatives and the OECS agenda.
So about in 2010, we got a World Bank funded loan to look at e-government. That is basically our first endeavor into anything E within the OECS. And we decided to work with the governments to basically set up the framework for, everything E. From that, this project ended in 2013. I moved across to the competitive business unit, and we decided to set up a program on e-business and e-commerce. The very first thing that we did was to do an assessment of the SMEs that we worked with. So on the screen you will see a graph, and it is a representation of some of our SMEs, because we did that assessment, and it's not a comprehensive survey, but it was a survey across 9 member states, because Martinique was not part of it. And it's important for us to look at it and see that we have well-established businesses. 60% of our businesses that we surveyed were basically in establishment for over 10 years. We traditionally were not looking at startups, but we felt it necessary to start to look at startups. So you will see a small percentage being startups. The next slide, you will also see it's important to take a look and see, the composition of these businesses. As you can clearly see, 69% of the businesses that we work with are micro. And it's important for us to recognize that, because the challenges that they face are slightly different than other businesses. 75% would be micro and small. You would only have 1% being, a real medium-sized business. Their primary markets. It's important for us to also look at their primary markets, because when we develop solutions, it's important to take a look at that. 72% of the people that we surveyed basically serve the local market. And for them, that's a home country. 5% other OECS markets. And you can clearly see a pattern here. Micro businesses working within, a home country, wanting to transact between individuals. The revenue distribution is, the e-commerce strategy is important here as well. The survey was a very long survey. It was about 79 questions, but I decided to use just these few slides. Here you will see that about 75% of the businesses that we work with do not necessarily look at, they do not have a strategy within their business in terms of anything E, really and truly. And for us, our work needs to focus on them. They're the ones that are important for us, because they're the ones that are actually driving our economies within the OECS. So as I said, what we did was we had the survey, and I want to highlight, just two examples of potential problems that they face in transacting on a day-to-day basis. So my next slide shows, a payment for Amazon. Many of us in the OECS, we we make these purchases from overseas. Many of us, we make these purchases from overseas. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is our bank, our central bank in the OECS. We have a fixed exchange rate at 2.7169. If you look very small, very tiny, you'll see an exchange rate there on Amazon, and that's at 2 days ago of 2.82. That's almost 4% of the transaction. That's an additional 11 cents. So that shows that, you know, when we import stuff from other countries, the payment processors actually take quite a bit from us in terms of SMEs. And the solutions that we have currently are not sustainable. And these are some of the challenges that the SMEs face. My next slide. In doing our development work, sometimes, you know, we have these app competitions, etc. We have many bright ideas. Currently, I know there's a mobile thing going on in Jamaica. We have a few persons there, a lot of bright ideas. It's sad to say that if you are a developer and you go to Google's site and you would like to register to be a developer in your home country, it's almost impossible for us in the OECS. If you look at the table that I'm showing here, only a developer from Antigua and Barbuda and the BVI within the OECS, and that's 10 member states, so that's 2 out of our 10, 20% alone can register as a developer on Google's App Store. And that's very sad for us. As a region, because the OECS is smaller, sometimes we're not taken as serious as we should be. However, we have the same ideas as everyone else in the world. And these are some of the challenges that our entrepreneurs face. So for us at the CBU, some of the barriers for us also in financial inclusion. Not enough money to go around. As I said, most of our SMEs are micro. When they look at the banking systems, I'm a former banker as well. I worked in the banking system for about 9.5 years at one of the regional banks. They don't see a need to have a bank account because when you get that paycheck, the banks are charging fees. It really does not make sense. Sometimes the documentation required, some people don't feel that, you know, I should get 2 forms of ID. Yes, the know your customer laws are in effect because we need to ensure that we know who the customers are. A family member may already have an account. So, you know, these are some of the things that in our research we have found out to be hindrances to financial inclusion. As was said over the last 2 days so far, 60% of account holders may make a deposit or withdraw 1 to 2 times per month. Do you know that some of our regional banks, they actually ask the tellers to drive the customers to the ATMs? And this is why some of our fees are associated with, you know, in-branch transactions. It's more cost effective for the traditional financial institutions to drive you to the ATM rather than to pay a teller a number of hours to serve a number of customers. Approximately 20% of account holders make no deposit or withdrawals in the past 12 months, and this is very true. Debit card ownership exceeds 80%. A number of the banks in recent times have gone on drives to actually physically bring you to the ATM to show you how to use the ATM. Actually, about 6 years ago, a photograph of me bringing an elderly man, an 80-year-old man, was taken, and I was in a newspaper in Dominica while I was working in the bank, showing that, you know, this is what the bank is doing and encouraging customers to go to the ATM. So the banks are actually trying to drive us to be more electronic. 70% of withdrawals are done via the ATM because of this. There is a low penetration in terms of credit card ownership, and this is because, you know, we've spoken about it. Credit facilities for SMEs, for regular persons, you know, is pretty low. although we say 60% of adults in the Caribbean do not have a traditional bank account, if you look at the graph that I have here, you will notice that some of the OECS countries, there's actually a high penetration of traditional use, the use of financial services. Dominica, for example, has a high penetration rate. And the simple reason is because most of them are actually at the credit unions. In the OECS, we have a phenomenon that many of our persons go towards the credit unions rather than the traditional financial institutions, because our credit unions have decided that, you know, these are the products that the customers really want. These are the ones that so we're going to basically give it to them as much as possible. Also, the indigenous banks are also on track to give better services or move towards technological solutions quicker than our regional banks. And it's important to note that. Also, the statistics show that 68% of adults who send or receive money or remittances use cash. Cash is basically king. 60% of account holders receive wages into their accounts. We know that the governments, for example, have decided that all payments should pass through an account. Right now, the social securities as well, they're moving towards having everything pass through the banks. So within the OECS, we do have some form of financial inclusion, but we're hoping to capture everyone. 60% of adults with an account pay their utility bills using cash. Why should that be? That's the question we're asking. Why? Every month when you have these long lines, really doesn't make sense to us. So for us, financial inclusion is one of the things that we're looking at very closely. My current slide here, I've shown, you know, financial inclusion in a few countries like Spain, the US. It's a bit high. And this matrix is not just only having an account, but it also things like, you know, ATMs per 100,000 adults, commercial branches per 100,000 persons, etc. And it shows that there is a clear pattern within the Caribbean. Some of these islands are the OECS islands, some are others. Trinidad is also listed here, as you can clearly see. So for us, we look at financial inclusion in terms of different categories. For us, there's an opportunity for two main markets. Type 1 market, where you have less than 40% of adults have an account at the financial institution. The GDP per capita is less than 5,000 US dollars. Average mobile subscription penetration and low smartphone or mobile data penetration. Because when we look at the mobile penetration, we also need to look closely at smartphone penetration and also data penetration. Because in a country like Dominica, where you have about 143% mobile penetration, data penetration is low. And these are some of the things that we need to take a close look at. Because, like, for example, if you're moving to mobile money, yes, you may have that mobile penetration, but if data penetration is low, this could hinder the free movement of mobile money. The other type of market, type 2 for us, there are two groups for us. Group 1, where you have less than 40% of adults have an account at a financial institution. GDP per capita is greater than 10,000 US dollars. You have high mobile subscription penetration and low mobile data penetration, which I just alluded to. Group 2, within that market, is greater than 40% of adults. They may have an account at a financial institution. GDP per capita is greater than 10,000 US dollars. High mobile subscriber penetration and medium mobile data penetration. So if you look at this table, you'll notice that all the OECS countries, with the exclusion of Martinique, is listed there. So Montserrat, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, and Dominica all fall within Group 1, where they may have a high mobile penetration, but data is an issue. So we need to work closer with the telecoms providers to ensure that the rates are at a rate that people can actually subscribe to data. Type 2, you have St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla, Tortola. Well, Tortola being representing the BVI, where you have a high mobile penetration and high data penetration. So these are markets that mobile money can be put in place, or a solution can be built around it. So for us, because we have these varying degrees, any solution that we look at needs to take into account these two segments. So as I said, these are the potential targets for us. Low-income adults, unbanked. You'd find these are the micro businesses, the 69% of persons that I showed you, where you have 1 to 5 employees. They may be unbanked. Micro business owners, also unbanked, fall within that range. And small business owners, underbanked. So as I said, the OECS, because we only recently started, I'm just going to highlight a few of our initiatives that we have undertaken since 2012. So as part of that very first project called eGRIP, that's Electronic Government for Regional Integration Project, what we did, we did a few harmonized electronic pieces of legislation. These legislation being electronic transactions, electronic evidence, data protection, electronic payments, electronic crimes, and electronic funds transfer. What we did a few consultations. We brought all the chief parliamentary councils in together, all the attorney generals from the OECS. At that time, it was only 9. And we went to the heads of authorities in 2012, and we got consensus from all the heads of the OECS to pass these pieces of legislation after we did extensive consultations. And I will touch on this in a little bit. In 2014, we did an OECS e-business and e-commerce assessment, as I said, because we wanted to find out what exactly was happening with our SMEs. And as I showed in the previous slide, 75% of our SMEs did not have any form of strategy or did not take e-business seriously or had no idea as to how to go about doing business online or electronically. Last year, we held our first OECS e-payments forum in St. Lucia, where we invited our central bank, the regional banks, SMEs as well as government entities, ministries of legal affairs, finance, etc. And we basically brought everybody together to discuss, what are the options we have. And as I showed in the previous slide, like for example, the Amazon example and the Google example, these are some of the challenges that we face in the smaller islands. And last year we also did some crowdfunding. And this year we also did some crowdfunding as well. And this year we also did an OECS Tech Bootcamp. So let me get into that. This is the current status of electronic legislation within the OECS. As I said, in 2012, we did a comprehensive project, and we came up with a harmonized suite of electronic legislation. The heads of authorities all mandated that they would pass the legislation for us, creating an enabling environment. In green, you will notice these are actually the laws that are in force. So you have electronic transactions basically being enforced in all the islands, except, well, St. Lucia and St. Vincent, they're passed, but do you enforce them? That's the question. Electronic evidence, very same thing. Where we come into issues is data protection and electronic payments. Data protection for us, our law is very similar to what is currently drafted for Trinidad and Tobago, where a data commissioner needs to come into force, into effect, and the office of that data commissioner. We realize that it's very important for us to have that to basically govern and be able to provide assistance to individuals, businesses, etc. And it was very important for us to have this harmonized piece of legislation because of our economic union. So what applies in one territory will apply in the next territory across borders. Because for us, our border begins when you enter one country. If you move to another country, it's not another border, and that's what we're trying to achieve currently. Because once you enter our economic space, you are in that economic space and should be able to move freely within that economic space. E-payments also and electronic crimes. And for us, advocacy of the passage of these bills are very important. We do understand that some of the countries, although they have indicated that they will pass all the pieces of legislation, have gone back to do reviews. And we also understand that there are foreign agencies assisting in the reviews as well, and we gladly accept that. We just want to ensure that, if there are any changes to any of the harmonized legislation, that all the countries come together at the same time to ensure that everything is in place together. Now, the e-payments forum, these are the recommendations coming out of that forum after we had many discussions. We actually put the banks on the spots. They had to make presentations. They were a bit uncomfortable because we spoke about fees and, the suite of solutions that they provide for us, which we felt were not sufficient. And the ratio of male to female, is good for us. And coming out of those trainings, we had some real good results. We basically saw that the SMEs are very hungry, for alternative financial solutions. The training session was done with one of the two crowdfunding platforms that we are aware of in the OECS, and that's Vision Funder based out of Barbados. We also understand that there is one out of Jamaica right now, also a Bajan entrepreneur. And it's our intention to work closer with any crowdfunding platforms. For us, we are open to endorse any OECS SME who is doing a crowdfunding campaign, as long as it makes sense to us. So we will provide that assistance to them. And this year, through the EU's 10 PDF program, we will provide some assistance to some SMEs. Because we felt that it was successful and we got quite a few phone calls, this year we did further training. And we actually did 19 training sessions across the member states. So here we included Anguilla. For the first time, we included Montserrat. We went specifically to Nevis. And we also went to Tortola, the BVI. So we trained 463 SMEs or persons. In this agenda, we also expanded it to the youth. So for example, if you look at Antigua and Barbuda, the female, you see 56 persons. And that is because we extended it to a youth female group. So we are doing a bit of crowdfunding training because we feel that we need to educate persons. As I said previously, the CBU is moving towards high growth and high potential trainings, etc. So this year, in February, we held our first OECS Tech Bootcamp where we invited SMEs from across the OECS to come to get some training, in business management, etc. We partnered with the World Bank and CDB as well. And these are the results that we had after the Tech Bootcamp. We had about 3 days of training, and then we had 24 hours where we told the SMEs, we need you to go out and look for markets, look for businesses, and look for pre-sales. We had, after 24 hours, they reported that they got pre-sales of $370,000 US after the training alone. For us, that's significant because that's the equivalent of 1 million EC dollars worth of pre-sales after only 3 days of training. So the CBU is trying to change the way in which we work. And this is just the tech sector. I believe there is about 4 of them in tourism on this list. So, these are the initiatives that we're looking at. We are basically tired of talking. We talk a lot. in the Caribbean. We need to continue to do. So for us, our call to action is to enable participation by the unbanked and create opportunities for financial inclusion, improve efficiencies and reduce costs in the use of financial services, and increase productivity by eliminating the current bottlenecks to growth. So for us, the bottlenecks of not having some pieces of legislation is not going to hold us back in moving forward. We need to help the SMEs. At the end of the day, the OECS is characterized by micro businesses. And if we cannot assist them in one way or another, we are actually failing all ourselves. Yesterday, the example of Dominica and the bid drop was spoken about. The actual reason that this failed was because it was during elections and the government could not move ahead to have an activity where every citizen would get 10 US dollars. That would have been a political move. But elections have come and gone in 2014. It's not impossible that you continue after an election and you have politics aside, you go back to do what you need to do because financial inclusion is important. If the government takes back up that cause and the funds are available, then you would have that higher penetration of mobile money and moving towards that type of business. So for us at the OECS, let me just conclude. We are about working with individuals, businesses. We're looking for solutions. We're looking to have a financial solution that would work, especially for the micro businesses. That business with 1 to 5 persons to transact across. A small craftsperson on the seaport, they would want to see the tourists walk off the boat and be able to transact with them without cash. Most of our tourists, when they walk off the boat, they don't hold much cash, but they have the cards in their pockets. Rather than have all the cards go back and the cash go back, we should be able to provide a solution for them right there on the craft port to take that money and grow our economies. Thank you very much.